Hey y'all, welcome into this edition of Off the Front Porch, our weekly podcast exploring the Southern experience. My name is Tony Ballman, and thanks for joining me out here along the highways and the dirt roads of the American South. On these adventures, if you've listened at all, you know we stop along the way to meet fascinating folks, explore places of great history and beauty, and immerse ourselves in events that tell us every time just how wonderful it is to be uniquely Southern. Well, today finds us back home for the first time in 15 episodes. We started our odyssey in Augusta, Georgia for our premiere, focused on history, about a certain game that you play with sticks and a ball. And today we return to the Garden City for another dose of nerdy. Yes, nerdy is not just what I do, it's who I am. You know this. So I am right at home this week in more ways than one. In 1845, the Augusta Canal was constructed to provide a source of transportation, water, and power to this city on the eastern border of Georgia. Today, more than 180 years hence, the Augusta Canal remains the only industrial canal in the American South that has remained in continuous use. It is on the National Register of Historic Places, and in 1978, it was declared a National Historic Landmark. And today, it remains a vibrant place of history and great beauty and invites visitors from all over the world to discover its fascinating story. So today on Off the Front Porch, we stop at the Augusta Canal National Heritage Area to explore that story for ourselves. My guest is Julianna Shurtleff, the Education Director here at the Augusta Canal. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for coming.
I am so excited. I've been here exactly one time before, and I have taken one of the Petersburg boat tours.
Good.
And it was so fascinating.
Yeah.
Just a beautiful thing. And we'll talk more about those a little later on. But first of all, kind of, if you will, give me a broad brush history of the Augusta Canal.
Well, like you said, we kind of start out back in 1845. The canal was dug, and it was a vision of a local Augustan, Henry Cumming, who was son of the first mayor of Augusta. Mm-hmm. And he had this idea. He had traveled up north to Lowell, Massachusetts, and also in Europe, where he had seen the Industrial Revolution beginning. The South was a little behind. It was still an agricultural economy here in the South. So he had this idea. He knew that we had the Savannah River. Augusta, it was also the time of the westward expansion, so a lot of folks were packing up and moving out west, so he wanted an idea to save Augusta, to make it a vibrant city. And I really think today Augusta would not be what it is without Henry Cumming and the Augusta Canal, because it did save the city. The canal provided jobs for the city, so people stayed. It was a hydropower canal, or it still is a hydropower canal. Drinking water for the city, and boat transportation. So it was dug in 1845 for those three reasons, and we still use it for those three reasons today. It is, like you said, the oldest hydropower canal still operating in the United States.
So 181 years after its construction, it remains not just a tourist attraction, but something that actually continues to breathe life into the Augusta community.
Amazing. Yes. So these old textile mills, like what we're sitting in now, this is Enterprise Mill, and there's two more on the canal still today that are now being developed into apartments, which we're excited about. But they're also still generating hydropower. We're still generating hydropower from the original generators from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, which is pretty amazing. And that is one of the missions of the Augusta Canal National Heritage Area, is to preserve that history and culture of our heritage area.
It's amazing. Augusta, of course, has been here since about the turn of the American Revolution.
Right. Mm-hmm.
This is an old city in Georgia, an old settlement that has grown into a city. And at 1845, oh man, that was 20 years before an event that just absolutely turned America on its ear.
Right.
How in the world did the Augusta Canal survive that? The Civil War.
Right.
Obviously.
So Augusta and the canal was actually here. It was only 40 feet wide and 5 feet deep, so it was actually half the size it is today. But it was still chosen as the location of the Confederate Powder Works factory, which was led by Colonel George Washington Rains. And that was a success story for Augusta, because not only did it power machines and make jobs for a powder works factory, but there was all kind of other industrialization on the canal, making cloth for uniforms, making tent cloth, making food for the soldiers, making cannons, making weapons. So the canal turned into an industrial location for the Confederacy during the Civil War. Of course, the Powder Works was the largest factory on the canal. It was the second largest gunpowder factory in the world. But Augusta was saved, or not saved necessarily, but spared, that's the better word, spared both times during Sherman's march to sea. And Augusta was never attacked, never sieged or a battlefield. And the fact that Augusta already had this industrial lifestyle, and after the Civil War, it helped the city bounce back versus other southern cities. We had the industrialization. We had the infrastructure here of the canal to build these textile mills that turned us into the Industrial Revolution.
When you hear that, you have to think, wow, if the canal had never been dug, right, Augusta might have suffered the same fate as Atlanta.
Absolutely.
Or any of the other
right.
cities that were savaged by that march to the sea.
Mm-hmm. It was also a huge railroad depot in Augusta. So not only was the canal, the city was fearing that Sherman would come here for the Powder Works, but also railroad facilities and the arsenal, the U.S. arsenal that was here. But it was spared, and the canal was again saved and brought back the city after the Civil War.
Well, and you said, of course, that the existence of the canal was part of the rebirth, revitalization, and the return to some semblance of economic stability after the Civil War and the destruction that occurred there. And then shortly thereafter, within 30 years or so after the conclusion of the Civil War, you start having this another sea change in history of industrialization and the ongoing industrial revolution. What was the canal's role in that?
Oh, it was huge. So the canal after the Civil War was still about 40 feet wide, but our mayor at the time, around the 1870s, was Charles Estes, and he saw how well the Powder Works had worked. They had produced over 3 million pounds of gunpowder during the Civil War, using water power from the canal to run the machines. So our mayor at the time hired Charles Olmsted, who had previously worked on the Erie Canal, which we all know of the Erie Canal.
Of course.
So he came down to Augusta, expanded the canal, widened and deepened it, because then that allowed larger factories like Enterprise, Sibley, King Mill to be powered in an industrial scale of like northern and in Europe. So that's when in 1875 the grand enlargement was complete, and that's when it went to about 100 to 150 feet wide and 11 to 15 feet deep. And from 1870 to 1890, Augusta's population went from 15,000 to 33,000 people. And that was folks moving in, working in the factories. It was a rare job for women at the time to be able to work in a mill, and also children worked to help their families. So these families were moving in to have a job here in the factories on the canal.
And the canal remained vibrant.
Yep.
And you say it's still, obviously, it is in use today for transportation, obviously for water and power and things like that. As we got deeper into the 20th century,
right.
Of course, upstream from the Savannah River, we had flood control.
Right.
And we had the Corps of Engineers that built the Clarks Hill Dam,
right.
Because Augusta was a city that was prone to flooding.
Yes, absolutely.
How did that flooding affect the canal?
It affected it a good bit until about the 1920s. Because, I guess 1914 the levee was built on the Savannah River, and that was a huge help for the canal because it did have a lot of big floods that would hit the bank and flood the canal and affect the hydropower, having to turn it off and things like that. But we have the levee. The head gates are regulated daily, which is the lock-in gates at the Savannah Rapids. Mm-hmm. So those are controlled for flood control. And then we have the Weigel Gate, we have the Long Gate Spillway. There's several other flood control systems built on the canal over the 20th century that were built for flood control. So by the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, during the New Deal of the Great Depression, the Weigel Gate, the gate at 13th Street, which is again regulated by the city of Augusta for flood control. So the Augusta Utilities Department has managed the water level for the canal since the 1800s for drinking water. And they regulate the water level. It's pretty amazing that they can do that. So even today, just the other day when we had all that rain come in, the Augusta Utilities Department will drop the level of the canal a foot per inch predicted of rain for prevention of flood control. So it's pretty amazing how they can do that in the 1840s and now still we use it today. Just the gate system. So
it is pretty amazing. And
yeah.
I must say that I've been here once before, but I had no concept that this place where we are sitting and all of the actual work that occurs around it is an engineering nerd's playground.
Oh, absolutely.
This is
absolutely. We get engineers in here, and I'm a history background, so my background is all in history. And I came to work here almost 15 years ago, and I have learned so much about engineering and hydropower and hydroelectricity. It's an amazing thing, and I found it so fascinating. And we'll get engineers coming in here just looking at the gears and the wheels and the generators, just in awe of everything, and that we're still running it today. And it's also an engineering feat we are, because when we have a missing part or something breaks, it's hard to find something for a 1920s umbrella generator. So, you know, it's a labor of love, we would say, for sure.
Well, and you sort of segued into it. Let's talk a little bit about this place we're sitting in here.
Yeah.
This is a tremendous museum.
Thank you.
This is, I mean, as you walk through here, as you sort of take the Ribbonous Highway through this museum, you really do get a tremendous journey through the history of the canal.
Yep.
And it starts right here on the wall. I hope folks can see it if they're watching the video. The Augusta Canal, new waters, new life. It sets the stage to 1845. Talk a little bit about the artifacts in the museum.
Okay. Well, this being an actual old textile mill, an operating textile mill until 1983, the place itself is an artifact, which is pretty amazing.
Yes.
So Enterprise Mill operated from 1877 to 1983. And then our museum really, like you said, goes through chronologically the development of the canal. And it was mainly used for hydropower, but also transportation of goods. Like behind me, I have a Petersburg boatsman. So Petersburg boats were used on the canal to carry cargo to the textile mills, but also to the Savannah River to avoid the rapids on the river. So Augusta's on the fall line where the Piedmont drops to the coastal plain. One main reason we could have a canal, the canal's higher than the river. It drops. The water drops, spins the wheels, turbines. We have turbines in here you can see. You can see how the wheels and pulleys would run line shaft systems on the ceilings. But these are all actually from New England, old textile mills, because when we opened the museum in 2003, this was completely empty. The mill had been emptied for years. So we did get a lot of artifacts from old mills up north, and then some from the Sibley and King mill that were still actually open when this mill opened, the museum opened.
Right.
We have cotton bales. We talk a lot about cotton and the way cotton was turned into cloth, which is pretty awesome. So we walk the process of how the cotton was brought in on a bale of cotton, spun into thread and woven into cloth. We have old draper looms in the museum, and one of them we can still turn on. It doesn't actually make cloth anymore, but just the noise it makes gives our audience an idea of what it was like to work in a textile mill. If you can just hear one loom running, imagine 200 on one floor running and people working in here 10 hours a day, you know.
The very fact that it's in the Enterprise Mill is that, again, is a tie to the history of this area, because there were possibly people listening to this podcast who worked in this very building. We get
a lot of those. I had someone come in 2 days ago, a young lady who researched her family, and she actually had like a third great grandfather, something like that, who was a Petersburg boatsman.
Really?
You know, and that's really interesting. And we get folks that come in, that have worked in either this one, Sibley or King Mill. And we always try to get their information because they have amazing stories of what it was like to work in a textile mill. So.
Well, and one of the things that caught my attention when I walked in here and I turned that first corner was an incredible diorama of the canal.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a 30,000-foot view basically of what the canal looks like, and how it's a beautiful centerpiece for that museum.
Well, thank you. We try to, you know, I'm born and raised in Augusta, and I always had heard of the canal, knew the canal was there, but you never realize, like you said earlier, the engineering feat of what the canal is in downtown Augusta and how it runs parallel to the river. And it's done that since 1845. So that map really shows people, and it helps us explain how the river is dropping here from the Piedmont region to the coastal plain. It drops 52 feet over 7 miles. The canal is built parallel to the river, pretty much 30 feet above the river level. So the water will drop back to the river, and as it drops, it spins the turbines, and that shows where the canal's running parallel to the river drops, and then the mills are built in between, dotting along the canal, and that water would drop and spin the turbines and produce hydropower. And then the second and third level that goes through downtown Augusta. Again, people probably walk by it every day and don't realize that's the canal, and that's a man-made waterway that was dug to power factories in downtown Augusta.
Well, and being from the Augusta area myself here, and researching for this, I had no idea that this was a national historic landmark.
Right.
That this is recognized by the Department of Interior, by the National Park Service, as an historically significant area.
Absolutely. And then I guess it was 2018, I'm not sure if it was 18 or 19, we became a National Historic Civil Engineering Landmark as well, because of the civil engineering that was used to, and still today, to develop this canal and run it as a hydropower canal. So we earned that from one of our board members, worked really hard to get us that designation a few years ago. And
you mentioned that this project sort of walked hand in glove with the WPA.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right to the works
they
progress.
Worked on the canal and during the Great Depression in the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. They worked on the head gates. They camped up at the head gates during the Great Depression and worked on restoring the head gates and putting flood control systems, building the banks up. So it provided jobs for folks during the Great Depression as well, not only during the Industrial Revolution. So it has brought a life to Augusta for sure.
So the Augusta Canal quite literally cuts through the history of the United States.
Absolutely.
You
can teach a U.S. history and talk about things in Augusta and the canal that went right. I mean, we're developing right now because it's the 250th for the Revolutionary War.
Right,
we all know that it's going on. And the canal necessarily wasn't here, but the land was here, and we go right through the land where the first siege of Augusta happened.
Yes.
On the canal. And so we're developing tours about what was going on the land before the canal was here as we take the boat ride through that area. So it goes all the way back to the beginning of Augusta.
It really does, and this is a fantastic museum, incredible history here, and you brought up the boats, so
yes.
let's talk about it.
We have two wonderful replica Petersburg boats. They were built in 2003 on Tybee Island, Georgia, and we take tour boats out Tuesday through Saturday, and we have a guided tour. We go up to about Riverwatch Parkway and back, but then we also have moonlight music cruises that go out in the spring and in the fall on Friday nights, and they have live musicians play on board. We like to bring in local musicians, bring food and drinks on the boat with you, so you can get a history tour, and then you can also get a fun tour on an evening cruise. And then you get all kind of flora and fauna. So the canal became a National Heritage Area in 1996 by Congress. And so we are now affiliated with the National Park Service. So since then, it has developed into a beautiful freshwater habitat. We have naturalized the area. So you'll see turtles, river otters, snakes, all kind of birds. You'll see all kind of neat stuff out there on your boat ride.
Alligators.
Sometimes an alligator, yep.
Yes.
Haven't seen any this year yet, but lots of snakes and all the other critters. But alligators will come out. They prefer warmer water. The canal actually stays pretty cold even in the heat of the summer because we're constantly pulling water from the Savannah River.
Yeah.
So it stays pretty cold. So we get excited when we see an alligator because it's pretty rare, but,
Well,
you never know. But definitely around Augusta. We know that for sure.
It's an incredible experience. Now, some folks may see, if they're watching the video, they see one of these ancient Petersburg boats in the frame. But you say these were Petersburg boats built specifically for this project?
Yes.
How do you go about building a Petersburg boat from what was that history so many 800 years ago to today?
So they found old architectural designs for the Petersburg boats, and we hired a boat maker out of Tybee Island who strictly makes boats, and he made two replica boats. Again, if you've grown up in Augusta, I don't know if you remember at Lake Olmsted in the 90s, there used to be a Petersburg boat in the middle of Lake Olmsted that two locals built in the early 90s and actually took it all the way down to Savannah. It was called Fort Augusta. And it's actually in the Augusta Museum of History right now. If you walk in the Augusta Museum of History, you have a huge Petersburg boat in the middle of the museum. So that is an actual like historic replica of a Petersburg boat. Ours are definitely modernized for comfort and leisure, but the idea is to be what you would see out here on the canal in the 1800s. And they're after Petersburg, Georgia, which is now a ghost town underneath Clarks Hill Lake.
And I actually met one of the interpretive guides before we started, and she's a former history teacher as well. Well, so we got history people sitting right here in a nice little cluster right here. But you also have to have, as I understand, highly trained guides. You have to have captains that know how to run a Petersburg boat.
So we have to actually have captains with a sea license for a 27-ton vessel, because our boats are, I think they're 29 tons.
Oh, wow.
So they have to go all the way through sea school as you would have a boat off the coast in Hilton Head Island, a fishing boat, just for an inland boat here. And we're regulated and managed by the Coast Guard. So we follow Coast Guard regulations. We get an annual inspection every year for the Coast Guard. And all of our tour guides and captains have to have a Coast Guard, well, the tour guides don't have to have a license, but they have to have Coast Guard certification to be the first mate. So not only are they the first mate, but they're also a tour guide. So there's a lot of training involved, but we have some excellent guides here, and we have definitely pulled from retired teachers, which have been excellent, and history buffs. I love how you said at the beginning that we're all nerds, because that's what we call ourselves around here. We're huge nerds. We'll get a random person come in and tell us they had a grandfather who worked at the King Mill and they worked in such and such floor, and we're going to start trying to research that. You know, we're going to go on a whole rabbit hole of that. That's what we love. So, yeah.
I think that, I mean, I should just completely rebrand the podcast and just call it the Nerdcast.
Oh, yeah, I think that would be great. Absolutely.
Everybody for the last this is the fourth week in a row I've had nerds who have embraced this title of being nerds.
We love it. Oh, yeah. I love it.
We have our own little world. Okay, so we have highly trained captains on the Petersburg boats. We have a first mate. The tour guide has to be a first mate. Right? That's pretty cool. I'm all of a sudden thinking my second career might be as a tour guide.
Absolutely. Yep, you learn how to do the lines. You learn man overboard drills. We do it all. I mean, you know, and then our boat captain came from New York Harbor, so he used to run fishing boats out in New York Harbor. Yeah, so he is very much a great boat captain. This is his retirement job. This is his leisure boat ride. And then we enjoy being out there and just meeting people from all over the country and the world coming to see us and take a tour. I mean, I have to say, I'm biased, but I think our tours definitely can rival, or, you know, Savannah and Charleston. We're pretty good around here.
Well, as we were starting this, one tour just went out. So you have several tours a day that go out here. And then you mentioned that on Friday nights you have these special tours.
Yes, we'll do the Friday night music cruises in the spring and in the fall. So right now it's July. We all know in Augusta it's the hottest part of the year. So, yes. So we have limited boat tours right now, only in the mornings. And then starting in September, when it starts to cool down again, we'll do more tours in the afternoons and then Friday night music cruises.
And that has to be an amazing experience to be out there on one of those Petersburg boats, have a musician sitting up there, I guess on the front end.
Yeah, they sit on the bow, at the bow, and they play music, and you watch the sunset, and you listen. It's beautiful. There's nothing like it. There really isn't.
Actually, I have to say that, gentlemen and ladies, if you are listening to this sounds like something for a very nice romantic date night in the fall.
Yep, that's what we get a lot of.
You get a lot of date nights here. That's exciting. Well, this has been so much fun here at the Augusta Canal National Heritage Area. Again, I want to encourage folks, if you're listening to this, to come out to the museum, walk through the museum, and then get yourself one of those tours scheduled, because having been on one, and yes, there will be more in my future, maybe tomorrow, I will.
Good.
There's nothing quite like getting out there, because you do. It's transportive. I don't mean that as a pun. I mean it transports you down the canal, but at the same time, from a historical standpoint, it's almost like you transport and you go back in time when you're on one of those Petersburg boats.
Well, I mean, you really do. We still have the textile mills out there on the canal. You still see the Ezekiel Harris House. You see Meadow Garden. I mean, all these landmarks in Augusta that have been here all the way to the 1700s.
And you go under the Butt Bridge,
we go under the Butt Bridge,
the name for the guy who was on the Titanic.
Knows Major Archibald Butt, and he went down on the Titanic, so we have that from 1914. So you really are transported in time, and you're riding on a boat on a canal that's been here since 1845. It's like I said earlier, there's nothing else like it around. So we are a very unique historic attraction, outdoor. We have over 25 miles of recreational trails that we've developed over the years for just recreation as a green space, that people don't realize that there's 2,000 acres of protected land in the middle of Augusta that is part of the heritage area that the canal has developed for just recreation. So we have the boat tours, this museum, and then trails you can explore.
People can go hiking,
biking
on the Augusta Canal.
Oh, yeah. All over. I mean, I'm sure they're out there right now. There's a 5K this weekend. People do races out there all the time. So we have a lot of really special stuff here.
This is amazing. I had no idea. See, I learned something here today putting together the podcast. Okay, how can folks find out more information about the Augusta Canal National Heritage Area?
Absolutely. Check out our website, augustacanal.com, and please follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and we try to keep up with that pretty well, with updates on tours and special events, the trails, or if there's things that happen that we've had to close a trail or anything like that as well. But the Canal Discovery Center, we are open Tuesday through Saturday, 9:30 to 4:30, and we do have daily boat tours, but definitely call ahead and make sure what we have available, because it is seasonal. Like right now, we only have 10 o'clock and 11:30 boat tours because it's too hot in the afternoon. But we do have them year-round. We're open year-round, so come see us.
Yeah, Christmas boat tour.
I know. Well, it's not even that cold around Christmas here. It's not cold till January or February sometimes, so we have boat tours year-round.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Julianna Shurtleff,
for
this has been amazing. I cannot wait to spend more time out here. I have to go get my hiking boots and come hike
go out on the trails. Yeah, you can go hike out behind the King and Sibley Mill and on the river. It's very pretty. Lots of great trails. And
if you want to fully immerse yourself in the nerd culture, go right across the hall and go to the Enterprise Mill leasing office. Live here, and then you can look down on the canal at all times. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you for coming.
All right, and I want to encourage you to check out the video version of this on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and check us out next time as we go a little farther afield for our next episode of Off the Front Porch. Thank you for listening.